The Berlin Conference of 1884 defined the configuration of Africa, which hitherto existed as a continent of multiple kingdoms and empires under native rulers. The conference, otherwise referred to as Congo Conference, regulated European colonization and trade in Africa as initiated by German leader Otto von Bismarck. The Berlin Conference is often called the scramble for and partitioning of Africa, as each of the imperial powers carved separate portions of the continent for themselves without recourse to racial and cultural identities and differences. 137 years after the Berlin Conference was held, Africa remains a legitimized playground for European nations that sought to exploit its wealth and resources and manipulate its human capital to promote trades and investments of Western powers. Western Spring Television identifies Berlin Conference as a major event in history. James Ajibolaige was a lawyer who obtained his first degree in classics from Nigeria's premier university of Ibadan. Born September 13, 1930, the orator and the polyglot spoke impeccable English, French, Igbo, Hausa, and Yoruba languages. His fine diction placed him among classical orators and public speakers like Cicero, the Roman orator. This attribute earned him the prefix Cicero of Esauke. He authored Kaduna Boy, an autobiography, Detainee's Diary, Constitution, and the People, among 6 other books. Bolaige was a colorful politician, elected governor of Oyo State in 1979 and appointed a federal minister in 1999. He was a pioneer founder of Afenifere, the Yoruba socio-cultural and political group. He invested his political sagacity to propel the group to the height of political leadership and decision-making in the southwest of Nigeria. Bolaige was assassinated on the 23rd December 2001. His murderers are yet to be apprehended till today. Western Spring Television identifies Bolaige as a watershed character in history. The British Empire was the largest and the most powerful in the world. At its zenith, the empire embraced a quarter of the Earth's land surface and imposed her imperial majesty's rule on more than 458 million peoples across nations and continents. The empire took off with overseas possessions and trading posts established by England, spread over 3 million kilometers between 16th and early 18th century. Like previous empires, the British Empire began to crumble on its weight of overstretched territories and growing unrest in a Western Spring Television, ours it is.
It's another time, another day, another opportunity to be alive. Good morning, Nigeria. Good morning, world. This is the Friday TGIF edition of Morning Spring on Western Spring Television, the diary station that say it as it is. This is what we do here at this time. We want to thank you for being part of the program all week and for staying with us today. FEMI Ojo is my name. Usually on Friday edition, we come in a bit, but then we still do the business that we do here, speaking to issues of public importance. Definitely, you know, you have to be informed. We analyze, we critique these issues, and then we lay bare for you to be a part of it. We look at the headlines, and then we get talking at the other side of it. Today is going to be a very, very fine one. Definitely in the state, here in Ocean State, in Nigeria as well. Now we have to mention the sub-region, the West African sub-region, where all seems to be not easy at the moment, especially with the situation in Niger, the dimension of the other nations, the Northern African nations, the Russian situation, you know, and the world at large as well. Now, so many things to really talk about. It will be a very interesting one. Good morning once again, and Tunde, good morning.
Morning.
I believe this is one of your favorite days of the week.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Where it is cumbersome. Good morning to you, our very esteemed viewers, wherever you are viewing us from, on all our social media handles, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, X, either way you love to call it. We are right there and we are hot. It's at Western Spring Television on all our social media handles. We are right there. And you can as well subscribe on our YouTube channel. We'll be glad to hear from you. Like, subscribe, and share at Western Spring Television. Welcome to the last edition of the program for the week. Just as Femi had rightly stated as well, it's always a very glorious moment. You take a little bit of breather, but then work starts again in earnest. Thank you for always being there. It promises to be an exciting time on TV today. A big thank you to the entire transmission team, our directors, our producers, the entire camera team. Thank you, everybody, for making it happen as well. Let's take a short break now. When we return, the dailies are here. Let's look at what they are saying before we get into the conversation proper. Thank you for being there, and good morning.
It's the dailies right now, a couple of dailies to really look at for today. But before that, part of what we form our conversation for today is, you know, when you talk about power, now either the power to do work, the ability to do work, the effort on the domestic scene, and now when you flip it over to economic power, you know, dominating and everything that has to do, you talk about the West, you know, being the superpower, but it seems things are changing. So many interests are rising.
Absolutely.
You know, the Russian interest, the China interest, trying to take over from the US. Formerly, we had the USSR, the Soviet Republic Union. Before what happened to them. And so all these nations of the world are trying to rise above other. Sometimes they come together as a bloc to hold their own, to make decisions for themselves, to trade within themselves. And that's why we come across BRICS. Talking about Brazil, Russia, India,
China,
you know, and South Africa. And of course, you know, we are hearing that other nations of the world wants to join the BRICS. They had a meeting, ended yesterday. So just to prepare the mind of our listeners to what they're about to hear. Now,
our viewers.
Now, our viewers, rather. My take is, in the middle of all this interest, where does Nigeria stand?
Yeah, that's just a painful thing. And I know that one of our analysts who's always been on either TV or radio with us has always stated that if Nigeria is not careful, a country like Morocco will overtake Nigeria. We've seen that Egypt now is gradually getting inducted into the BRICS world. And if we look at that alone, and again, look at South Africa. In Africa, they are the ones championing this. They are the ones recognizing. They are the ones that they are among the BRICS already. And looking at China,
having that global feel.
Absolutely. And looking at China, one of the biggest economies in the world, US, China, but China and Russia, their collaborations in the last couple of years, it's been trying to see what they can do to bring down the Western power led by the dominance, not bring the dominance of the US. But the painful thing now is, I would wish that Nigeria was the country there rather than South Africa. It's always a good thing. Definitely. But the point now is, what corruption and what have you has cost us in our dear nation has led us to where we are.
We'll get there. It will be a very interesting conversation this morning.
Absolutely.
Maybe you start from your end there.
All right, let's get things started this morning. Let's check out the headlines making the rounds from the pages of the Punch newspaper. And just as we've been discussing economy, the big bold caption on the front page of the Punch says, Naira crumbles to 920 Naira to $1. Few marketers push for fresh price hike. Look at that. The Naira has crumbled to that amount, 920 Naira to $1. Few marketers push for fresh price hike. The writer there says, fuel price can't remain at 617 Naira, with Naira falling below 900 Naira to $1. That's credited to Ipman speaking there. Nigerians back subsidy removal. FG replies Obaseki. Labour wants NNPCL probed. If there's a reason why NNPCL has to be probed, let it be probed. It shouldn't be. We've heard that CBN would there's an internal auditing or something like that at the CBN. Why NNPC? My brother, I know quite a whole lot of revelations will come out from there if it has to be. But I'm so concerned about the fact that the Naira to the dollar these days is it's heartbreaking. 920. This is the highest I've ever heard in my entire life. This is not good. This is scary.
When you talk the floating situation, many thought it will help when you float it, and then so that there won't be these sharp difference between the people making sharp gains at the black market, the parallel market. The BDCs and the rest of them and the bank, but it seems sometimes it's just fluctuating actually. Sometimes it gains, sometimes it drops. But this drop is quite significant.
Large. It's large, and it's we just hope something drastic can be done at this point in time. Moving further, the building that collapsed yesterday in Abuja, you can see rescue workers and also okay, who's that? Is that the Minister of the FCT? Somebody, but you can see victims
just above the
patient. Wow, that was a good one. He quickly went to see what it looked like there yesterday. We just hope the people who were the injured will get treatment and will survive this. It has the headline there: falling slabs trapped us while fleeing. Abuja collapsed building. That's credited to a victim. Oh boy, I wonder how buildings can collapse if the right materials were used. Well, things happen, be that as it may. I just hope we do the needful. Moving further, FG faces heavy criticism over 4.1% unemployment data. There is the need. If the level of unemployment can be reduced in this nation, everybody has something doing.
Yeah.
The speed of insecurity will definitely reduce to a large extent, but it might not be out totally.
But
it will reduce.
On IDOWU, you know what they say?
The devil's garage, not only workshop there. And family faults army silence on senator's aide allegedly killed by rogue soldiers. By now, I expect that that soldier, whoever that soldier is, should have been probably court-martialed. Why would he have done what he did if he was guilty? But not keep a family awaiting justice.
Yeah.
It's unfair. If it had been the other way around, if it had been a civilian that had probably killed the soldier, by now we know what reaction, what will have actually happened. But we just hope the needful will be done. On the bottom strip still, Nigerians stranded in UK, victims of visa scam. Nigeria stranded in UK, victims of visa scam. And I will always urge us as human beings, let's do the right thing. Go to the right source, get the things right.
Yeah.
If you wouldn't have the issue of this scam, if you probably had channeled your things in the right way.
Sometimes ignorance play a part. Some don't know. So when they are introduced to these things, sometimes it looks too good to be ignored. And then, you know, the way they converse, and you know, when it comes to this Japa thing, these days, nobody informs anybody.
Oh boy.
You don't tell your neighbor.
Yeah.
They just find out that Mr. X, Mr. Y has moved. So that's the issue. I think people are more open. You can't blame people that possibly are not too open. But if they're more open and they have shared these things with other persons, possibly there might have been help to tell them, don't do this. Take it this way. But everybody just wants to do the things quietly and move to the other side. And then you see updates from WhatsApp status that, okay, you know, what they do. And so some it's ignorance, some they want to cut cost, you know, some they are just played upon, and then they find themselves in this situation. But let's do the right thing. Just like
honestly,
Tunde said.
The right thing. On the top strip of the Punch newspaper still, ECOWAS military action won't yield positive results in Niger. That's credited to the Russian envoy speaking there. And FG makes 2 trillion naira taxes from Google, Facebook, foreign firms. That's a report. And hey,
that's a good one.
Yeah, something at least. So all this social media handles. Wow. Okay. Culture minister still a copper. Group alleges. Okay, maybe they will look at the fact that she hasn't graduated. She hasn't concluded her.
I wonder what if they are talking about Anatu Musawa, because that's the picture there.
Yeah. Yes.
How can she be a comic?
Nigerians really
I think Anatu Musawa should be in her early 40s or late 30s. So what kind of comment?
Probably the main she didn't finish. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Probably.
Get a copy
of the Punch newspaper. That will be all from the paper.
That will be an interesting read.
Absolutely.
There. Moving on to the Daily Trust for this morning. The Daily Trust. And boldly written there, cow, sheep shortage looms as border closure bites harder. That's a consequence of this issue going on in Niger. You know, the trade, the commerce that happens between Nigeria and Niger. And it bites here, most likely bites harder on the other side as well. Riders, supply reduced by 50% in Borno, 70% in Katsina. My date in 4 trucks grounded. Trader, you know, dates, this thing they call Dabino. Yeah. You have the picture there. And the largest cattle market in Jigawa, desolate. That's not so good. Tinubu asked clerics to dialogue further with junta. He has given them his support to say, go over there again and see what you can do. Meaning the president, who is the chairman of the ECOWAS sub-region, is open to dialogue.
Absolutely.
By the way, the ECOWAS is saying, if you choose to be violent, we have a standby team, military team, but then let's still keep dialoguing. The junta said, give us 3 years to oversee these things, but the ECOWAS are saying 3 years?
No way.
No way. The AU has even suspended Niger as well. Okay, then you see the picture there of a truck with cattle and with some sheep and the date we're talking about, popularly called the Binu here. And when these things happen, when there is scarcity, then there will be, you know, the prices of the available ones will rise. Yeah. Definitely. At the bottom strip in black, working for 1 hour shows you are employed. MBS tells Nigerians. I wonder the logic behind that. That's the Nigeria Bureau of Statistics.
Yeah.
Telling Nigeria, you have to, sometimes headlines can be misleading. It doesn't give the total, And then at the bottom strip there in blue, man, wife arrested for stealing neighbor's 2-year-old son.
Wonders will never end. Wonders will never end.
That's bizarre. Tinubu's economic reforms to attract investment to Nigeria. Shetima. Okay. Wiki orders owner's arrest as 2 killed in Abuja building collapse. Yeah. The owner of the building to be arrested, fined, to be prosecuted. If actually, the persons involved, but the lives are lost. Can't be retrieved.
That's the painful
Some are fatally injured, and we pray for their quick recovery as well. But then it has been said that the Minister for the FCT, Yeson Wiki, has said all the medical bills will be footed, by the FCT, and he has directed somebody to take charge. But mine is let justice be done, let investigations be done. But then can we be preventive in nature?
Absolutely.
Because when lives are lost, even if it's a single one, a day-old baby, that's too precious, you know, to be lost. And at the top strip there, Dangote beat MTN Globalcom banks to emerge most valuable brand in Nigeria for 60 years. Okay, if you want to know who is organizing that, you have to get a copy. My educational records not relevant to Atiku's petition, Tinubu tells U.S. court. Okay, back and forth. And finally, on this paper for today, the front page, Japa, Nigerians stranded in UK after emptying savings on travel, just as we have read and the Punch the other time. And for you to know what people go through to make these exodus, really, to make this journey, some sell everything sellable. Even things that are not to be sold are sold. Honestly. Just to make sure they get to the other side. Now, going through the pain, some have to borrow, get loans from unlikely sources, sell their properties, everything. Some people, you know, the days that leads to the departure, you see them just squatting somewhere because they've sold off everything just to raise money. And then when you now get to the other side, now discovering that is all a scam. Or some are even stranded at the airport here.
Honestly, you find them sleeping in various parts of under the bridges.
So many stories of people who get to the other side, and whoever is inviting them, whoever is their link, switches off the phone, and those persons are just there stranded. And you know what happens with the police on the other side? They see you are just there homeless. What are you doing? What will it profit a man or a woman or a family who has sold off everything, get to the other side, then get challenged with the link, persons who have invited them, who possibly has promised them to come over, the person switches off, and the police come in, and the persons are deported back just within a few days.
Where are you coming back to? Where are you coming back to?
You know, as they say around here, God forbid. But please, let's be careful.
Absolutely.
Let's be watchful. The decision to travel is entirely yours. The decision to travel is, I mean, not to travel, is yours as well. But when you do, please go through the right sources.
And that takes us to the next daily that I have with me here. The Nation newspaper is what it is called. The big bold headline there says, Edu hyperinflation, low GDP per capita to end soon. That's the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister speaking there. Of the economy. There is quite a whole lot on your table, sir. Please let it be done. And you have the rider there. Unemployment rate down to 4.1% in first quarter. Investment drive on costs. That's credited to the Vice President, Kashim Shettima, speaking there. And on the top strip, just above that major headline, the red colored line there, you have Wike orders arrest of developer after death of 2 in Abuja building collapse. Thank you, Mr. FCTA Minister. He has actually gotten to work just like every other minister. We wish them the best. Now, coming further down, I am under pressure over Niger junta, says Tinubu. Speed up truce talks. President tells Ulama.
There's the Ulamas.
Oh, those are the clerics. Yeah. All right. Yeah, and I think that's, you're seeing them in the picture there at the presidential villa, shaking hands with Mr. President. Please do the needful. Wish you the very best in your negotiations, and so that things can be restored in Niger Republic. Further down, President graduated in 1979. Chicago University replies Atiku. And the writer there says, why we can't release academic records to plaintiff. Yeah, Mr. President could have sued if without his authorization, you couldn't have released, because someone needs to back up his case or that, but it will have caused a catastrophe. Yeah. Then further down, Nigeria ranked 11th globally in internet penetration. What do they use it for? I hope it's for the right purposes. And just beside that, the major headlines there, to the right, to the extreme right, Wagner boss made mistakes, says Putin. When I saw that story, I laughed the way I just chuckled at this moment. Yeah, I'm not saying President Vladimir Putin actually ordered the bringing down of that airline, or the airline lost control, or whatever happened to that airline. But for the fact that what happened between these close allies, Putin and Prigozhin, you know, their relationship was intact until Prigozhin did what he did with his team, left the marching on Moscow. And wow, I know what it looks like, but don't let us preempt anything. It's just sad.
Even made that Putin made that statement in a condolence message to the family, you know. So if you need detail, just get a copy.
It's literally about the
nation, because they used to be friends. They used to be allies. And then before something happened between them.
Wow. While the marching on Moscow happened, I remember I heard Prigozhin saying they could have overthrown Putin if he had wanted to. And left me, wow, that was huge for you to have said what you said. Looking at the kind of person Mr. Putin is, I've read his bio quite a whole lot of. He's one man you don't want to mess with. And up till tomorrow morning, I keep saying it, that's why the USA and US will always be careful with whatever will happen between them and Russia. Confrontations and everything. They would, as much as, they are both superpowers, but the US will still tread it softly. Vladimir Putin has made quite a whole lot of impact in Russia. Let's move on here. Zimbabwe opposition leader claims rigging. Excuse me. That's the election going on in Zimbabwe. Just within how many days we are hearing of rigging. When we will get it right in Africa, rigging should not be our thing. On the top strip of the same daily for today, hold governors accountable for palliatives, says Tinubu. Thank you, Mr. President. At this point in time, we can assure you, even from, we want to know what's happening in Kasina, want to know what's happening, how they've been able to drop it at Gombe, in Jigawa, in Lagos, and Ibadan. Western Spring Television will always say it as it is.
In Osun State as well.
And in Osun State
charity should start from here.
No doubt.
Yeah.
We'll see what it looks like. And other stories, APC leaders step into Sanwo-Olu assembly row. Oh my. Why nominees were stopped Okay, you want to know more on that? I know 39 were submitted, 22 were confirmed, 17 were turned down. We'll see what happens in the course of the weekend and next week. Although government overrules Akure Monarch over market closure, and potholes endangers lives on Third Mainland Bridge. Yes, please do.
Everywhere, not just on Third Mainland Bridge, even in the inner routes in Okini,
exactly,
in Gongola, in anywhere.
Everywhere.
If there's anything still called Gongola.
Honestly, and our Adamawa state.
Yeah.
Right, that'll be all from the Nation newspaper.
Of course, lastly, on The Guardian for today, step aside, please. The many troubles of green passport holders. And you know, that's quite a statement that many persons have gotten to hear when you're in a queue, when you're in a line. And just because you are holding the green passport, step aside, please. And then you are made to go through all kinds of checks.
Yeah.
You know, and that's there. You have the picture of the Nigerian passport, the ECOWAS passport there. With some scores: mobility score 56, visa free 23, visa on arrival 31, ETA 2, visa required 142 rather. You know, passport power rank 82, world reach 28%, population 225,082,083. Talking about the power that the green passport holds.
Absolutely.
Mobility score 56, visa free. That means the type of countries you can go with this passport, you know, without a visa 23, visa on arrival 31, ETA 2. The nations that will require these passports, that you require the passport and your visa 142. You know, hopefully we get to have specialists that will get to break this thing down for us. And that headline does it for me. Step aside, please. The many troubles of green passport holders. And then you have the passport power. The index is there in that place boldly there. The big story is confusion as court declares Apapa LP national chairman sacks Abure.
That's another. It's a seasonal movie.
Yeah,
and we just hope
the Labour Party issue.
It's a seasonal.
Somebody
movie.
will say big trouble in Little China. You know.
Oh my God.
It's the back and forth.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and 24 banks lose 5.7 billion naira to fraud in Q2 amid rising digital crimes. And 15 IOCs may threaten energy transition in Africa and in Europe. And diphtheria death toll hit 100 in Kano, 26 in Bauchi. This is becoming unbecoming.
Absolutely.
If I may use that word. We should really be careful. And at 1 hour a week, only 4.1% of Nigerians unemployed, says MBS. We read something similar just a while ago. At 1 hour a week, only 4.1% of Nigerians unemployed, says NBS. Isn't that statistics? Meaning if you can work 1 hour in a day,
you are employed.
You are unemployed. Okay. And at the top strip there, Nigeria left out as BRICS admits 6 new members for global influence. We'll get into that very shortly. And, you know, back to that story that I first read, the big story there, battered national image. Battered national image. Step aside, please. That made me remember a very renowned man of God in the nation said something years ago. And I was at that gathering when he said it was at the airport. And there was this clergyman who was dressed in a cassock, you know, the full regalia with the big cap, with the gown, flowing robe. And the person was there approaching the guys at the counter. And, you know, with all that paraphernalia of that particular office, this cleric was called over. Can you please come here? Taken to a room, checked from head to toe, and, you know, possibly they saw him that way, and they feel many persons have used that particular regalia to do nefarious activities. And, you know, this man of God I was talking about, felt very embarrassed. And you could look at somebody, at the end of the day, that person was innocent, not carrying anything, but it speaks to what some of us as Nigerians do to batter the image of the nation and this particular passport that most of us complain about. We have our own part. We do very terrible things at times. There was a time in which it was reported that some guys went to the UAE in Dubai. The court and you could see the video pursuing themselves with machetes in another man's land, breaking glass windscreens, mirrors, attacking people just because you want to identify and then you want to claim supremacy in another man's land.
It's really sad because
in fact there is an ongoing issue with Nigeria and UAE.
That's now Mr. President is just stepping into it. It's really
these
sad.
Things is not really the nation per se. Sometimes Nigerians have a part to play and we must take responsibility for how these has turned out. The power be retained in the green, white, green passport. We hope it will get better so that we'll be proud of that particular passport, hopefully.
There's been a great summit that actually ended in South Africa yesterday, and it's the BRICS nations. And the BRICS nation comprises of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And at the close of the summit yesterday, 6 countries were offered membership, the likes of Ethiopia, Saudi Arabia, Iran, United Arab Emirates, Argentina, Egypt. But the ball of contention we will be looking on the program when we come back after this short break is where is Nigeria and why were we not offered membership? Let's analyze this. What does this portend for the future of Nigeria? And if that is going to happen, we've looked at it that Nigeria is a close ally to the United States. And is that why Nigeria, or why they have looked at it? Our analysts will be breaking this down to assess and to assist us to get a better understanding of what this means at this point in time. Let's take this short break. When we return, we'll go straight to the conversation. Stay with us.
Turn it up! It's the Wild Wild West, and Western Spring Television is pulling out all the stops to make sure that you don't miss out on every of the fun and happenings around you. Yup, we've got you covered because your girls got all the juiciest tidbits and entertainment news from around the world. Cross over to the chocolatey side of entertainment. Join me, Chocolate Cassie, on Eccentric as we take you into every bit of the juiciest news, fashion, music, movie updates, and other trending conversations. Together on the show, we'll get personal with your favorite celebrities via phone call, Zoom, or even live here in the studio. Eccentric will be showing on your TV screen on Western Spring Television, channel 190, only on StarTimes.
The Berlin Conference of 1884 defined the configuration of Africa, which hitherto existed as a continent of multiple kingdoms and empires under native rulers. The conference, otherwise referred to as Congo Conference, regulated European colonization and trade in Africa as initiated by German leader Otto von Bismarck. The Berlin Conference is often called the scramble for and partitioning of Africa, as each of the imperial powers carved separate portions of the continent for themselves without recourse to racial and cultural identities and differences. 137 years after the Berlin Conference was held, Africa remains a legitimized playground for European nations that sought to exploit its wealth and resources and manipulate its human capital to promote trades and investments of Western powers. Western Spring Television identifies Berlin Conference as a major event in history. James Ajibolaige was a lawyer who obtained his first degree in classics from Nigeria's premier University of Ibadan. Born September 13, 1930, the orator and the polyglot spoke impeccable English, French, Igbo, Hausa, and Yoruba languages. His fine diction placed him among classical orators and public speakers like Cicero, the Roman orator. This attribute earned him the prefix Cicero of Esauke. He authored Kaduna Boy, an autobiography, Detainee's Diary, Constitution, and The People, among 6 other books. Bolaige was a colorful politician, elected governor of Oyo State in 1979 and appointed a federal minister in 1999. He was a pioneer founder of Afenifere, the Yoruba social, cultural, and political group. He invested his political sagacity to propel the group to the height of political leadership and decision-making in the southwest of Nigeria. Bolaige was assassinated on the 23rd December 2001. His murderers are yet to be apprehended till today. Western Spring Television identifies Bolaige as a watershed character in history. The British Empire was the largest and the most powerful in the world. At its zenith, the empire embraced a quarter of the Earth's land surface and imposed her imperial majesty's rule on more than 458 million peoples across nations and continents. The empire took off with overseas possessions and trading posts established by England, spread over 3 million kilometers between 16th and early 18th century. Like previous empires, the British Empire began to crumble on its weight of overstretched territories and growing unrest in our various colonies. Today, the British Empire no longer exists. What is in place is the Commonwealth of Nations, a loose association of sovereign states which recognize the King of England as the titular head. Western Spring Television identifies the British Empire as a watershed empire in history. Dramatist, playwright, and icon of Yoruba thematic arts, Duro Ladipo was born December 18, 1931 in Osogbo, southwest Nigeria. His clergyman father christened him Timothy. His other names, Duro Dola, Duro Shomo, Duro Rike, reflected his persona and the circumstances that surrounded his birth. The legendary stage actor had in several public fora identified himself as one of the greatest abikus born to die in this world. Family records reveal how he was born and died 13 times. The The intertwining names he bore thus lent credence to his spiritism. Duro Ladipo was one of the best known and world-acclaimed Yoruba dramatists to emerge from post-colonial Africa. His notable works, Obakoso,
All right, welcome back, and it is the conversation time right here on Morning Spring from Western Spring Television. We'd like to say thank you always for being here with us. And at this moment in time, it's a critical time for the economy, for Nigeria, and for the economy of this great nation. As at about 3 days ago, that ended yesterday, there was a summit in South Africa that had the BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. And that summit actually happened there in Johannesburg, South Africa. And as yesterday, there was an announcement that of the expansion of the emerging countries with integration of 6 new country members as from January. The countries were named yesterday. You had the United Arab Emirates, Egypt, Ethiopia, also you had Iran, you had Argentina as well. 6. 2 African nations. Where was Nigeria? Why were we not part of the countries to emerge in the BRICS? This is what we will be looking at, and what does this portend for the future of the economy of Nigeria at this point in time. When you have countries like China, which is one of the biggest economies in the world, you have economies like Russia, and if South Africa is championing this, if Egypt is being brought in, Ethiopia being brought in at this time, should Nigeria cover her face, her hand with her face with her hands? What does this mean? We'll be analyzing this morning and taking a cue from how can this be gotten right. It's a pleasure to have with us in the house 2 very amazing young men who will analyze this for us and help us out this morning. It's a pleasure to have Mr. Emmanuel MONYEH. Thank you most sincerely for joining us always. And also, I would like to say thank you to Mr. KANMI ADEMILUYI. Thank you, young men.
Thank you so much. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you? Well, thank you.
You're looking good.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's no more news, gentlemen. It's happened. The BRICS summit has come. It ended yesterday in South Africa. Well, where do we? 6 new emerging countries are being called up. They will be joining the BRICS come January. Nigeria isn't there. Let's take out the fact that we have new members such as Egypt and Ethiopia from Africa to join the BRICS. Can someone just explain, please analyze this for us and to us, Mr. ADEMILUYI, please.
Yeah,
why was Nigeria omitted at this point in time?
Well, and if I can quickly chip in this, why, he has asked why Nigeria was omitted. Let me add, why must Nigeria be included as well?
I think I prefer your question to Tunde's question.
Okay.
Actually, jokes apart, I would have been astonished if Nigeria was invited to join BRICS. A long time ago, when he was president, Trump said, the only thing that Trump ever said that I agreed with was that a country without steel is not a country. A country that has no basic industries cannot be a modern society. There's a common trend between the original members of BRICS and all those who have been invited, Ethiopia, Egypt, the whole works. They all have basic industries. They have iron and steel, they have machine tools, etc. The normal basic. Nigeria doesn't have basic industry. Where's your iron and steel industry? Where are your basic tools? The country does not have the foundational pillars to join BRICS. It's look, this country has always suffered from delusions of grandeur. That Nigeria is a rich country, it's the biggest economy in the world. Is it in the world or in Africa? I can't even remember. These are delusions of the fundamentals are not there. And what you don't understand is what you ought to understand is that this country is sliding into irrelevance. If you say you have a fantasy 200 million people, what is the purchasing power of that 200 million people to justify my citing an industry? A very good example, quickly, it was in the 50s. When Awolowo set a minimum wage that was roughly 23% higher than the minimum wage in the eastern region and the northern region, it looked like sheer political opportunism of a hard-pressed man who was very unpopular and wanted to win elections. Action groups were being slaughtered in local government elections. But when I talked to Chief C.N. Okeke, who was Minister of Finance, his son was a year my senior at St. Gregory's College. Many years later, you know, after youth corps, and you know, he said, look, that the thing was that they didn't realize what Awolowo was doing. That by making minimum wage 23% higher in Western Nigeria, he was actually attracting industries which should have come to them in the East. He was the Minister of Finance in Eastern Nigeria, because the purchasing power parity was higher in Western Nigeria than in East and Northern Nigeria. That he himself, as Minister of Finance and a trained economist, that it took them 3 years to realize that what Awolowo was doing was not political opportunism. It was a smart business move. You get what I mean? Now the thing is this: Nigeria is sliding into irrelevance. It is better for you to go and invest in a market of 20 billion people of a certain purchasing power than 200 miserable people who can buy how much? You look at a shopping mall in Johannesburg. I mean, go to your YouTube. Look at a shopping mall in Rwanda, in Nairobi, right? Take your video to, I'm not going to mention anything, Tunde will give me a bill. Take your this thing to a shopping mall in Ibadan, in Lagos. Do you see the same volume of people as you see in a mall? Even in our Osun Mall here, is it the same you see in Nairobi? It's not. This country, quickly, so that doctor can make more sensible contributions. No, this country is sliding into irrelevance.
You know,
it didn't start last week.
One would say, you know, the use of the word "the country is sliding into irrelevance." Someone want to take it like isn't that extreme?
It's not. It's a look. What I'm saying is a realization. It's a wake-up check, a reality check. And to end the delusions of grandeur, which would have made, if it wasn't for that, Nigeria would be an original member of BRICS. Very quickly, right? It goes up back all the way to the 70s. I was at university in the UK, and we had this joke. You know, a lot of truth is said in jokes that no Nigerian can come to a British university in 1970-something, and if he got less than a 2-1, they should horsewhip him, use koboko. Why? Because if you are studying economics, right, if you're studying developing economics, even at that time, the reckless consumption spending of the Nigerian elite on Oxford Street, on Liverpool Street, on this, showed a country that was a class. There was no need for you to read a textbook like Andre Gunter Frank, the development of underdevelopment. Nigeria is a classic textbook example of Nigeria is not a developing country like Egypt or Ethiopia. Nigeria is a classic textbook example of the development of underdevelopment. Nigeria is underdeveloping. It's not a developing country.
Right.
Egypt is, Ethiopia. Get that straight, and you will know why they didn't. You weren't an original member, otherwise N would have been in BRICS, and why they would have been. It wouldn't have made sense if they, because you are bringing nothing to the table. I'm sorry.
All right. You know, let me ask Mr. Monyeh this. You know, for proper context, and for the benefit of people that don't even know exactly where we are picking it from. Who are the BRICS? What do they do? What's their significance?
You see, before I start saying that, I think I want to kind of a little bit differ from what Mr. ADEMILUYI said.
Okay.
And that will dovetail into what BRICS is. Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa.
Yes.
South Africa was a later admission. It was actually BRIC. It was formed in 2009, and South Africa was admitted in 2010. 2019, thereabout. It's a new addition. So the concept of BRICS is to develop the global South. The global South. It is not by accident that these countries were added. You will notice that the BRIC itself is a geopolitical, geostrategic, and geoeconomic grouping of people who believe that there should be a de-dollarization of the world economy. How soon they will achieve that is another thing completely. I agree that it's an emerging force, but it's not yet as powerful as it is being hyped.
So there's a hype.
I think it's more, for now, it's more of a hype that's achieving a particular purpose than the benefits that we hope we can derive immediately.
Right.
Now, if you look at the new thing, America itself is shooting itself in the legs.
Okay.
America has decided to use the dollar as an instrument of unilateral sanctions against certain countries. Forgetting that even the adoption of the dollar itself, was immediately after the Second World War, when the British economy had been hard hit by the recently fought war. So they wanted a currency that would be more stable as a means of international exchange. America, having assumed that role, you know, the dollar is now tied to the gold reserves. But don't forget that after the Second World War, gold is now being mined seriously in the Urals, especially in Russia. So they have that there. Unfortunately, America over time has become too, overzealous in its application of sanctions. For example, you say you have placed a sanction on Iran, you place a sanction on Russia, you place sanctions on Russia, and yet the European Union is still using Russian oil. That is why it appears as if sanctions are not working against Russia. So how do you not do it without paying for these things in dollars?
Yeah.
You need an alternative means of payment. That is why you now have BRICS. Now, if you see the new entrants, Argentina is on the same peninsula with Brazil. In fact, Argentina was invited based on pressures from Brazil itself. They are contiguous. Russia, India, China are contiguous. Most of the crude now that is being refined in India is imported from Russia. But if the transaction has to be done in dollars, sanctions could be applied to the dollar receipts that will accrue to Russia. So the best thing now for them to do is to look for another currency that will be an alternative to the dollar.
Is that where the yuan is coming?
Yes.
Okay.
The yuan is now coming because yuan, the Chinese have over $3 trillion
Yes.
in reserves.
Yes.
Strong enough to tackle anybody. Strong enough to tackle anybody. So you see that when you are bringing in the UAE too, the UAE also has very strong reserves. So what you have is the yuan and the ringgit. The yuan is also called, and then the dirham. The dirham or the ringgit. Now, you now have those two being used to counter settlements for international trade within that grouping. Now, if you now come to Africa, you notice that they took Egypt and Ethiopia. Egypt and Ethiopia are like on the Horn of Africa, very strategic too. For Nigeria, you notice that it's not only Nigeria that was not invited, Nigeria and Kenya. Nigeria and Kenya have demonstrated, have proved themselves to be more Catholic than the Pope. They have aligned too much with the West that it will be difficult to actually trust them in the new international conspiracy that is going on. Now, if you look at what is happening, I think that not only those 6 were invited, 40 countries actually applied.
Yes.
40 countries actually applied. Who knows if Nigeria applied or not?
Yeah.
We don't know yet.
It wasn't mentioned.
It wasn't mentioned. And you know that Shetima was there, the vice president.
Yes.
So I'm sure they must be making some moves to join BRICS eventually. Because you cannot just invite somebody who is not interested. I'm sure that they are watching some things about us, and maybe gradually they could, but I doubt it. And that is where the only point where I'll now agree with Mr. Komi, that Nigeria is not economically ripe to join that kind of grouping.
Having been touted as the biggest economy in Africa for years. Although Mr. Kwame has called it a delusion of grandeur.
Yes, I agree with him.
Do you agree on that part?
I agree with him. I agree I agree fully with him on that. It's a delusion of grandeur, because when you say, when you go with our population figures, you talk of 220, 225. I ask myself, where did they come from?
You have issues with the population?
I do have issues with the
figures.
If when I was growing up, we were touting 60 million as our population, and I'm still not dead, and I think I still have a few years to stay. I wonder how all of a sudden we arrived at that population.
But that's the population boom.
No, but I will explain why.
Okay,
you know, the reason is this. When census figures are going to be compiled, if you hear that enumerators are within your local government, what people do is that the local government will now assemble the stakeholders within that place and say, you know, these people are coming, please make sure you take care of them, put them in the good hotels, inflate the figures because of the allocation that will come to them. So they will say, you know, for political delineation, say you want to create more wards. We want to create more wards. So the higher the population, the more wards you will get.
Okay, we have another one, our hands very shortly. Let's not doubt the process. There's another chance to have it. Yes, please.
Very quickly, in favor of Dr. You know, it's important to me.
Please,
because part of our discussion.
All right.
Don't you find it odd, and you can spin the yarn as many different directions, on the day of independence in 1960, the Federal Republic of Nigeria, well, you had me become the Federal Republic. In Nigeria on October 1, 1960, had 7 million more people than the United Kingdom. The population of the United Kingdom between the 1st of October 1960 and today has moved by only 8 million people. There are only 8 million more people living in the United Kingdom since.
Are these very viable facts?
Why did you check your phone? You don't have to take my word.
No, I'm just asking. You have
facts that I know, that I checked last week. Now, how much has Nigeria moved from the 1st of October to this morning? How come Nigeria has an oddity that population increases as you move from the coast? I mean, does that sound normal to you? That when you move from the coast, the population increases as you enter
the desert.
Is there any other country like that? You said that, please check your phone. Is that possible that you move from the coast? Do you move from the coast in the Gold Coast in Ghana, and population increases as you go to the north?
So basically, we're looking at it that Nigeria, the population of Nigerians isn't up to 200 million at this point in time.
My guess estimate is that Nigeria has a population of roughly about 145 million. I can argue that till tomorrow morning.
That's why I said we have another chance to have another figure very shortly.
But gentlemen, what are the key strategies that BRIC countries employing to counter the American geopolitical influence, because it seems as if they want to break that dominance of the American world? Mr. ADEMILUYI.
Oh, I think they're trying to create an alternative trade bloc.
Okay.
Obviously, it's a delusion to think that they will ever have a common currency. But maybe they can work out trading arrangements and break the American suffocation. I think I'll leave Dr. Mori to expand more on that. But I think that one thing that should disturb you, actually, which disturbs me, is that to broaden it out, I'd rather leave BRICS to Dr. Mori. He's very much on the ball. Have you ever thought about the consequences of the African Free Trade Agreement? Are you prepared with Glasgow-Smith line, a country that was here as Bicham, exiting Nigeria? More manufacturing companies are planning to leave. The country's manufacturing base is shrinking. Its purchasing power is shrinking. I think we should actually steer a little bit away from BRICS and say, how prepared is Nigeria for the AFTA, for the Africa Trade Agreement that you rushed to sign? My own position when that thing was signed by the Buhari administration was that we should have taken a pause. The British, for example, were late entry into Brexit. I mean, not into the European Union or into the EEC that became, because they felt that they were not ready at the time. Of course, there was a veto by de Gaulle and stuff. But even before the Gaulle's veto in 1962, they had a pause that maybe we are not ready. You see, the thing is, whether it's BRICS, it's trade agreements, it's providing an alternative to American dominance. I think we have to really now try and start taking life a little bit more seriously. That, leave aside BRICS, right? How prepared is Nigeria for the onslaught, the word is used deliberately, of AFTA? How prepared is our manufacturing base for AFTA? How prepared are our lack of institutions for AFTA? How can a country operate, whether you want to go into BRICS or you want to go into AFTA, a country that does not have seaports? This country has no, okay, you know any seaport? I know the Lekki Free Trade Zone has been opened, but the port of Apapa was the 7th most efficient port according to the United Nations Yearbook in 1961. Nigeria does not have one port in the top 10 ports that was released on this thing about 10 days ago. I think we have to look at it seriously, that how your next program should be how to halt Nigeria's slide into irrelevance. I'm sorry, I think Dr. Moore.
Wow.
Yeah, let me ask, Dr. Monyeh, now you talk about Brazil, Russia, India, China, and then South Africa, different nations with different political leadership, style of governance, economic models. How has these nations been able to find cohesion, in your own opinion? Because Russia practices something different from what India does, from what South Africa does, and now they want to bring in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Iran, with all these other countries. Now, so far, how do you think they've been able to gather that momentum, to be cohesive, to get along?
BRICS is more of an economic conglomeration than a political alliance. The new additions is just like adding OPEC to BRICS. If you notice that they brought in Iran, brought in Saudi Arabia, and UAE, brought in UAE. These are basically oil-producing countries. So it's strategic. That's why I mentioned it earlier on that it is actually a geostrategic move. It is not yet a political group, so they can be as disparate as they come.
But the economic models tend to be different.
Yes, the economic model, if I look at Iran, Iran is even an odd one out that you never have expected Iran to come. But don't forget that China facilitated the reconciliation between Iran and Egypt.
Oh, okay.
China facilitated the reconciliation between those two countries. You will notice that Iran has suffered a lot of sanctions. Russia is suffering sanctions.
For Iran, some would say duly so.
Well, it's debatable because when you talk of sanctions against a particular country, you might be looking at the variables in that country from different perspectives.
Okay.
Is it because you're a Muslim state? Is it because their views are different from yours? But even God himself made moors and mountains, fields and fountains. He made valleys and everybody can't think the same way. So if you're not applying sanctions because of my own particular way of life against me, then something must be wrong. And again, you always realize that no matter how bottled up a genie is in a bottle, it always finds its way out. So if you decide to sanction somebody, there will always be somebody that you rescue the person you're sanctioning. That is exactly what has happened. The rescue is already here. So what they are doing now is what they call the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
That's it.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend, and I have to survive. And don't forget that even with the sanctions against Iran, Iran is not doing too badly compared with Nigeria. Now, when we mention Nigeria, we start talking of why this Nigeria was invited. This is a country where our external reserves had been long depleted beyond what was in the public domain. Even of recent now, we are now being told that our foreign reserve is even in the region of 3-point-something billion. It's not even 36 billion.
It's lower than that 3 point.
Now, NNPC that has never made any profit is now borrowing $3 billion to stabilize the Naira. NNPC that is already supposed to be a limited liability company, that is even not a government, how is it now going to borrow money to? So how do you consider Nigeria to be a country that can be dealt with when you are not even open with yourselves? You are not open with yourself. You don't have the economic data that people can use in assessing you. When we were coming in, driving down here, we were discussing something about, okay, if you want to employ somebody, you must look at his resume and see, okay, what has this person done in the past? What are his areas of strength? What are his core competencies? What is his capacity? Before you assign something to him, what has Nigeria demonstrated? Falsified figures in population, falsified figures in terms of our external reserves. So how will you expect normal countries to assess us as people that they will want to associate with? So those are the problems that I think are on ground.
Mr. Monyeeh, please, let me still stay with you so that I'll pass the part B of my question to Mr. ADEMILUYI. Now, let's come home to Nigeria at this point. What is the implication of the emergence of BRICS to Africa, and with South Africa at the forefront at this point in time?
South Africa has always been the powerhouse of Africa, no matter what anybody says about it.
That's the way you see it?
That's the way I see it. Because if you look at,
that's the way it is.
Take images of South Africa.
Yes.
And you will never believe that you're in Africa. That is the truth.
How?
Fine. If you take the images of the cities of South Africa and compare them with the images of the cities in Nigeria and other African countries. Okay, can you compare the images of the cities of Abuja and Lagos with that of Niamey? The capital of Niamey, from the images we see, are worse than the cities of Osogbo and the Ede. Okay. So it is. I don't have to be told that the South African economy is better than the Nigerian economy. They are not talking of the number of megawatts. We are still, after 60-something years, we are talking about less than 7,000 megawatts of electricity.
What was your point? South Africa went down. It's a crisis from 53 to 33.
Can you imagine
33,000 is still a lot. They are now complaining that they are voting against the government because it dropped from 53. Sorry, Dr. I'm just supporting you.
So when you look at South Africa, I think it is still doing. It could have been doing better, but ever since the transition to the ANC, the economic parameters of South Africa doesn't seem to be going upwards anymore. Yes, they are coming down, but it is still at this point they are still better than Nigeria. And when you talk of the impact on Africa as a whole,
yes, please.
Yes, the BRICS as an emerging bloc is representative of the global South. The global South, that means the developing nations, Whether Nigeria is underdeveloping, whether Nigeria is developed, is what nobody can actually say. But for now, I think we don't yet qualify to be in the same category as a developing nation. We only deceive ourselves that we are developing. But when you talk of the really strong economies of Africa, I think, well, for patriotic reasons, we will say we come before South Africa, but realistically speaking, we know that we are not. And this economic bloc, if they are successful, and I see them being successful, when you know, even Nigeria, there was a time we threw up this currency swap with the yuan. Yes. I'm not sure we had the political will to go through with it. But isn't it going to be easier when you have a broader basket of currencies to trade with, where you can actually use your currency the way it is without floating it or fixing it, and you can trade your currency with another country? So they are giving us an alternative. I'm sure that with time, many African countries are going to key in, but they are also, the BRICS have also set very serious standards for admission. They are going to scrutinize to know that we are not, because they know us, we know ourselves. They know we like our figures in this country. So they will check to see if we have actually qualified. And whatever affects South Africa and affects Nigeria, eventually is going to affect the whole of Africa, except Algeria. In fact, we are thinking that Algeria will have been invited too, but Algeria has not yet been invited. But whenever it comes to Africa, if they are able to, because you see, there is this the red belt of at the center of Africa now, where you have this coup taking place, is going to make trade much more difficult. You know, they wanted to get gas from Nigeria to Algeria down to Europe, but with the sanctions against Niger, Mali, Guinea, Chad, I mean, that belt is making things much more difficult.
Actually, before you ask my question, I just wanted to support very excellent contribution by Dr. MONYEH. Don't start comparing Nigeria and South Africa. South Africa has its developed industrial base. South Africa also has a largely modernized agricultural and agro-industrial economy. In fact, actually, South Africa should have been doing much better. My own perception, you know, from way back is that because of fatigue, it's not easy to spend 27 years in a jail. And the general, you know, people were fatigued. I think the only tactical mistake that Mandela and the ANC made was their failure to get a repudiation of the apartheid era debts of the apartheid regime. I believe if they had gotten the kind of thing that Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala got in exchange for nuclear disarmament, I'm telling you, South Africa will be about the 6th largest economy in the world. You can't compare South Africa with Nigeria. I have to make that clarification because there's too much delusion of grandeur that just supporting what Doctor was saying. Look, I mean, don't go and start comparing Nigeria and South Africa. Okay. They're two different countries.
All right.
Mr. ADEMILUYI, at this point in time, would you suggest that Nigeria dumps the ties we have with America and probably queue up with BRICS?
What ties? Look, you know what Nigeria should do?
As in moving away from the ally with the West,
of the United States.
And moving towards the
Nigeria should try and do is to try and build a country. Whether your ties let me give you a good example. I've given about 7 million. I hope nobody knows me is watching this. In 1964,
yes, sir,
when de Gaulle was making a tour of Latin America, the only major country he didn't stop by was Brazil. Brazil is the biggest country in Latin America by population. You get what I mean?
Yes, sir.
So when he arrived in Peru, the journalist mischievously asked him that this is your last stop before you go back to Paris. That why did you not go to Brazil now? How can you visit Africa and say you are not going to Nigeria? Why did you go to Brazil, the largest country on this continent? And de Gaulle, you know, is de Gaulle now, crazy man, you know, he famously retorted, that's because Brazil is not a serious country. The president of Brazil, Tancredo Neves, was asked by journalists about a few hours later that this is the difference. That how can this man say that Brazil is not a serious country? They expected Tancredo Neves to now start screaming and shouting, say, God punish and God compare, which is what your own people would have done here, like Mohammed and Co. You know what Tancredo Neves said? He said, look, it is not true that we're not a serious country, but there's no smoke without fire. Every Brazilian, from myself as president to the cleaner in the presidential palace, let us roll up as this and put in an extra hour. You know the irony? 9 months ago, Brazil replaced France as the 7th largest economy in the world. I wish de Gaulle and Tancredo Neves were both alive
to see.
Forget about your delusions of whether your ties with America, your ties with BRICS, the wahala of AFTAC, which you have entered into. Look yourself in the mirror. I'm not doing well. I'm not doing well in the class. I'm near number 22 out of 25 in the class. What is wrong? What is to be done? I'm not blaming Tunde for my misfortune. I'm not blaming this one. I'm not blaming Dami. This is not the time to be talking about your ties with the West. Look at what, do what Tancredo Neves said. There's no smoke without fire. If de Gaulle says we're not a serious country, let us prove him wrong. 9 months ago, they proved de Gaulle wrong. Who is a bigger economy now? Is it France or is it Brazil? Who would have thought when de Gaulle made that infamous remark that one day in the lifetime of a people who were, say, 10 years old, like I was in 1964, that in their lifetime, that Brazil would overtake France. It was a joke. Look at India. India is in leaps and India has gotten out of hand now. They're the 3rd largest economy in the world. India. The best thing is for Nigeria not to think about any ties with America. Negotiate your pay on a case-by-case study, but realize your defects. You must have basic industries. You must modernize your agriculture. You must diversify your revenue base. The Blue Economy Initiative is a fantastic initiative. You have solid minerals there. It is, you see, it is part of why you are stagnant, that we still continue what should never have happened of having the president of the federation, commander-in-chief of Nigeria's Army, also being a government minister. You are putting a premium on these petroleum resources, which is unnecessary. Is the Prime Minister of Holland, the 2nd largest food exporter in the world, even though their landmass is the landmass of Ekiti State. Is the Prime Minister of Holland, of the Netherlands, is he the Minister of Agriculture? There are a lot of things wrong. This BRICS thing should be a moment of reflection that we are not doing well. We are sliding into irrelevance. How do we go? Well, let's go back to the foundations and see how in 20 years' time, Nigeria too will be one of the top 5 economies in the world.
All right. I think that's a very a deep one there, because as they say, especially the elders as well, that self-introspection,
younger people like myself.
Okay, self-examination is one of the best things that can happen to anybody. To look yourself, you said it in the mirror and say, what am I doing rightly? What am I doing wrongly? And truthfully as well. You know, talking about the challenges facing the nation is, one would say, every country of the world has its own challenges. One way or the other. The Brazil, the Argentina. Some will even say, why will Argentina be invited? Because
I don't know.
A day is super.
It doesn't make sense.
With a failing economy and what is happening over there.
It's a failed economy.
Yeah. So, back to Dr. Monye. Now, talking about Nigeria, the question someone want to ask is, why should Nigeria be a member of the BRICS? What do we intend to gain as a nation if actually we put our acts together?
Before I answer the question, I want to respond to why is Argentina there, even though it's a failed nation. Argentina and Brazil are the only 2 countries on that peninsula.
Okay. Yeah.
Anything that affects Brazil will affect Argentina.
Okay.
Anything that affects Argentina will eventually affect Brazil. If Brazil is busy developing itself and you now have economic refugees from Argentina flowing into Brazil, what will happen? That's why I said Brazil especially pushed for the admission of Argentina.
Right.
It was a special case.
That's
Having said that, you remember I said Nigeria, for now, actually doesn't need to be a member of BRICS and might not even be considered for membership of BRICS until when it puts its house in order. When you are talking of contribution in the cooperative society, each cooperator is supposed to bring nearly equal contributions to the common till. So, but when you now have anybody bringing Nigeria in now, it's only going to bring in a bigger nation into BRICS. Because the only thing we want now from what Nigerians always want now is either aid or borrowings. No, they want you to go and develop yourself first. We don't need to go there yet. And we will not even be admitted yet. That is the truth. We won't be admitted yet because we are complaining of not having enough money, whereas we continue to display ostentation in our lifestyles. You see the large number of the large number we have in our cabinet, with all the attendant expenditure that will go into servicing them. You find people who are distributing palliatives that are not produced in Nigeria. How is that going to help us? Are we a serious rice producing nation? Is rice being produced in this country? The rice that's being distributed now, how does it regenerate our economy? You spend a money that you say you don't have, and you want us to go and join BRICS? This is from the same members that they would not even want a liability at this point. They're also trying to build their own solid base.
To move on from what Dr. said very well as always, do you enter a university without meeting an entry requirement? You just walk into FEMI or University and say, please, where can I register? What Doctor is saying is that you have not passed the JAMB now. Go and get yourself well prepared. Pass JAMB in flying colors. They will be begging you. You are the best graduating student from JAMB this year. Please come to us. Don't go to UI.
Still staying with Dr. Monye at this moment in time, can BRICS effectively shift the global power balance, or will it meet obstacles on the way?
What's the time?
One, BRICS, like I said in my opening remarks, still has a long way to go. BRICS is not going to challenge the direction of the economy for now, of the world economy for now. The reason being that it's still a long way off, but it's a good start.
Okay.
It is a good start, and long journeys begin with the first step.
Absolutely.
But I don't see that, I mentioned the word hyping, that for now, yes, it is being hyped. Now it's providing alternatives to U.S. unilateral decisions. Like, for example, there's a meeting going on now in Wyoming where central bankers are holding a meeting. Whatever the U.S. decides now, either on their foreign reserve, on the rates, is going to affect everybody. It's going to affect everybody. But with what is going on now, with China gradually becoming the power it is, with India also becoming the power it is, I think there is going to be a gradual but not immediate shift.
So as it stands, the BRICS doesn't pose a threat to the West.
I don't see the BRICS posing a threat in the next 30 to 40 years.
30 to 40 years. Thank you.
We'll give our fingers crossed.
Yeah.
And just as Mr. ADEMILUYI, so many generations, so many decades to come, you will still be here to reassess this.
I don't pray to be here the last 30 years.
I'd like to thank you, gentlemen, most sincerely for being a part of us again this morning. Dr. Emmanuel Monye, thank you for your brilliant analysis. Mr. ADEMILUYI, always a pleasure having you on this show and all our shows. Thank you, gentlemen, for being a part of us.
Thank you.
And definitely that will be a wrap on the show for this week. Some will say yippee, but then more work starts over the weekend. Thank you for being a part of our lives. We'll be back again on Monday on another edition of Morning Spring, and it promises to be spectacular. TUNDE, who is my name? Irresistible TD on X.
All right, thank you for being part of the program. Big shout out to the gentlemen, here as well, and to you, our distinguished viewers across the globe. Let's do the best that we can. A takeaway from you from what these men have said, men of wisdom, really. Young men, okay? I agree, is the fact that Nigeria and our leaders, if you are listening, if you are hearing, or their handlers, let's get our act together.
Absolutely.
Firstly, before thinking about joining alliances, we have the resources, we have everything, just the will to do what is right. Thank you. As always, so we'll see you on Monday on this program. Femi Ojo is my name. It's TGIF. We have something for you. Please stay with us. God bless Nigeria. Bye-bye.